we'll wait another minute or so and see if anybody else joins. We already have 11 people, which is great. That's more than I expected right off the bat. Hey, those work, Juliette. Plug in earbuds. I have a pair right here in the drawer. I'm just not using them because I like over ear more. I have a pair of AirPods that I almost use, but they also are like, I don't know about y'all, but AirPods always make my jaw hurt really bad. I'm scared it's like something to do with the vibration or whatnot. I don't know if that's just me being paranoid, but I've heard they're not good for you. Alarm set 5 minutes. Okay. Okay. Good to know I wasn't late. That's what I'm saying, no? Like yeah. I feel like that should be a conspiracy theory. Maybe I need to promote that somewhat. Okay. I'm just gonna go ahead and get started because it's 3 p.m. So I've got a list of questions that you guys submitted before, totally beforehand. I guess that's kind of my fault because I asked for that, but it's cool. So it gives us something to talk about. If you have questions, you can just put them in the chat and I'll talk about them when I can get to them. But I'm gonna go through this list first. So 1 second. Okay. Yeah, so I got a big list of questions. It's like a page and a half. It's probably gonna take the majority of the time, but we'll see. So Malachi says in my subscriber chat, how much should the US get involved in Iran? Yeah, so there's a couple of things we need to think about. Obviously, just war theory is the theory that people came up with at some point. Honestly, I don't know when it originated, but it's a theory that people came up with at some point for how we justify wars, because wars are obviously evil things, and how we justify international conflicts. And there's four things that need to be met in order for something to qualify as a just war or a just conflict. So it's an important question, but this is really I'm trying to think how I want to approach this. So three of the parts of just war theory, three of the conditions that need to be met for a war to be just, are things that happened before the war. So you have to have reason to do the war. You have to have a serious reason to do it because it's going to cost a lot of people their lives. So you got to have a serious reason to do the war. You have to have the authority to legally lead your nation into war. So, for example, the president has the authority to do that. I don't have the authority to lead America into war. I'm just a normal American citizen. The president has legal authority to do it. So if I started a war, it wouldn't be a just war. But if the president did, it would be a just war. And third, it has to be the last possible resort. You've tried everything else and it hasn't worked, so you're finally going to resort to war. So those three principles, those three requirements for just war, they are things that happen before the war really starts. But the fourth is tied into this question, is proportionality. So in order for a war to be just, you need to directly proportion your, trying to think of exactly what it says, you need to directly proportion your attacks and your offensives, your defensives according to the the seriousness of the war. So as an example, let's say the dictator of North Korea calls Trump cusses Trump out or something. Let's say he goes on YouTube and like cusses Trump out. Trump, under just war theory, is not, if assuming, let's say, well, okay, I need to actually come up with a different example. Obviously, whatever we do when we're in war needs to be, for the most part, a reaction, because just war should be a reaction. So Malachi is saying, how much should the U.S. get involved in Iran? We need to be involved in Iran as much as the Ayatollah is involved in killing his people, would be my answer. So I'm trying to. This is the first time I heard this concept explained to me. It took me a second to get it, so I'm trying to explain this as simply as I can. We've got, let's say the Ayatollah is killing like 1,000 people. That's a ton of citizens, and these are just innocent protesters. So what we need to do is look at that, and we need to say, okay, we're going to respond in proportionality. So we're going to not nuke Iran. There's no reason to do that. There's tons of innocent people there. But what we are going to do is neutralize the Iranian regime, the Ayatollah's regime, by, say, assassinating him or removing him from power. And say he escalates and he starts attacking the U.S. Okay, now we're going to go after the entire regime. We're not just going to kill the Ayatollah and decapitate the regime. We're going to go after the entire regime, and we're going to end it forever, and we're going to give the power back to the Iranians. So it's something that obviously war theorists, defense experts would need to determine. It's not something I don't think I can determine because it's very, very specific. We need to be involved in Iran proportionally to the violence that's being done there and to the crimes that the Ayatollah is committing. But I do want to point out, he pre-assumes that we are going to be involved in Iran, which is great. That's great. I love it. I absolutely love it. That is the right attitude to have. I think we should be involved. We just obviously need to be involved carefully. Looks like we got 16 people now. Cool. Okay, so next question. Okay, Juliette has a comment on that. She says, unfortunately, I think every war we've been lied to about the real reason and issues behind the war. However, I don't think it's always been 100% evil reasons for war every time. I would agree. I think the majority of wars that we've been in, there has been something deeper behind it. So, for example, in the wars in the Middle East, the Bushes, when they began the wars in the Middle East and they inserted U.S. troops into Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria right after 9/11. They very conveniently, so the Bushes had a massive oil company. They had a whole thing going with that. They very conveniently set up all of the U.S. forward operating bases along their oil pipeline in Afghanistan to protect that oil pipeline from the rebels and insurgents that were going to try to destroy it. That's completely personal interest and personal motive. And the whole time they sort of stayed on the defensive. So I don't think that war was conducted rightly at all. But the whole time they sort of stayed on the defensive because they were trying to protect that oil pipeline. And it's just putting money into their own pockets, their personal pockets. It's not really benefiting America in any way. So there's an example of a war that we've been lied to about. And I think to some extent, the same thing happened with World War I. Unfortunately, the Korean Wars and Vietnam Wars. Definitely. And I won't get into all that right now, but it's an uncomfortable truth of having leaders that don't follow Christ. So, Jonathan says, thoughts on invading Greenland. Okay. I know I talked about this on the podcast. I think it was 2 weeks ago or the week before, maybe. I'm very much in favor of it. His terminology is a little funny. Invading Greenland. Maybe we can avoid a war with Greenland. But I think we definitely need to get control of Greenland. And if worse comes to worse, we will occupy Greenland. So I was watching Michael Knowles today. He was talking about how the French are trying to establish a military presence in Greenland right now and strengthen ties with Denmark to try to prevent us from taking it. And he was kind of theorizing about whether or not that's going to turn into a war with France. I personally don't think it will. I think France is terrified of us, as Michael did at one point. Michael's hilarious. Guys, if you don't listen to Michael Knowles' show, you got to listen to it. It's pure entertainment, and he's so smart. He knows what he's talking about. At one point, he's like, I've got the French military doesn't have the best record. And he's like, I've got the flag of the French military under my desk. And he pulls up a tissue. Because, of course, it's a white flag. And he waves it around. It's like, I blow my nose on it all the time or something along those lines. It's like, that's really funny. So listen to Michael Knowles' show if you can't. But that is the truth. The French military does not have a good track record. They're not really a world superpower. Macron, their prime minister, I wish he was a better force for good in the world, but he's not. And his country's been crippled because he's opened the floodgates and let all sorts of horrible immigrants in. Not that all immigrants are horrible, but he's somehow managed to let some of the worst people in the world in his country, out of all the people he could have let in his country, and failed to shield his people. And so all of those immigrants are kind of just weakening France, and France is not really a force for good in the world. It's not a strong force at all. So I don't think France is going to have much to do about Greenland, really. Like, as soon as we show any sign of being very aggressive about Greenland, I think they're going to drop it and move those troops out. But yes, I'm very pro getting into Greenland. We need to take back the influence that China has in Greenland right now, and we need to free the Greenland from the Danes. 85% of Greenland doesn't want to be under the Danes and doesn't want to be under Denmark. They want to be free. Coincidentally, 6%, only 6% of them want to be connected to the US, but maybe satisfying the majority isn't something we can afford to do. Yes. Yeah, I identify as the correct person in this debate, and I ask you to respect that. Exactly. Yep, agreed, Juliette. That is very true. Okay, so Merissa says, thoughts on Trump and Venezuela, his involvement in the country, and your thoughts on China and Russia's reactions. I'm having a hard time keeping up with that story and feel like I can't get solid information that feels credible. Okay, so first off, I relate completely. I've had a very difficult time trying to figure out what's actually going on with Venezuela, because you can always be sure that, like, the leaders are never telling you the whole story. There's something going on behind the scenes that you don't really know about. The geopolitical scene is extremely complicated. The main thing that I think is going on with Trump being really obsessed with Venezuela, and I say obsessed in a good way. I don't say it in a bad way. While he's not obsessed with, like, other places that he could be obsessed with that also need help, is because there's a bit of a proxy war going on, obviously, between us and China and Russia, and Venezuela is caught in the middle. And um, yeah. So the problem is simply that China and Russia want a lot of the oil and natural resources that Venezuela has, and they want to maintain a dominant presence in our hemisphere, and they want to use Venezuela as kind of like a midpoint to get drugs and things into our southern border to weaken our society. This is mainly China. Russia's doing this, but the majority of it is China. China's been running these operations for a long time. We know they have, and we know they're heavily, heavily involved with Venezuela and with all sorts of immigration things. And Trump's putting an end to that, and he's sending a very, very big warning to China specifically. The Maduro regime and the Chavez regime, which Maduro worked in, they're the two previous regimes in Venezuela, have both been closely allied with Russia and China and with all of our enemies. So Ben Shapiro is really, really great to listen to on this. I know some of you may not like him, but he has an episode where he explains, and I kind of wrote down what he says to summarize it, but he explains it really, really well, and I think he's right. Maduro's removal specifically, which is the biggest operation we've taken in Venezuela so far, that is benefiting the United States because, well, for several reasons, but mainly because of that oil I was talking about. Their oil industry is just handing resources to China and Iran and Russia rather than the US. So they're not giving it to people in their hemisphere who could actually help them. They're giving it to enemies who are actively hurting us. And Venezuela, again, is maintaining close relationships with all three governments. Ben frames this as a matter of, like, extreme national interest. Energy policy is huge. We need to be able to maintain energy independence, and that's impossible with what Venezuela is doing. And then, of course, geopolitical alliances. So we need to keep China and Russia scared. They need to be terrified, and they need to know that we're willing to do, like, anything. Venezuela also has really strong influence on Cuba, because Caracas, the capital city of Venezuela, it provides support to Havana, which is roughly 90 miles from Florida, from U.S. territory. I'm not sure where the closest point actually is. I'm assuming it's Florida, but it's 90 miles from U.S. territory. So that's scary, because Venezuela hates us, and they're arm in arm with Cuba, and Cuba is, like, right offshore. That's obviously why Marco Rubio has talked about doing the same thing to Cuba several times. And then, of course, there's the migration crisis. So almost 8 million people, I believe is the number, have been displaced from Venezuela during Maduro's rule. So huge mass migration. And a ton of them are coming to the United States. And I'm sorry, but we don't actually want them here. We have a big enough immigration problem as it is. And it's not something we can mess around with. So hopefully there's some things that'll help clear up why we got involved in Venezuela. I support it. I support it 100%, and I support our continued involvement in Venezuela. I do think, though, Trump says things like, we're going to run Venezuela until further notice. I think we need to be more specific about what we're talking about. Because, like, what's that going to look like? Or is he going to designate somebody in the government to run it? Is there going to be an American running it? Is the military going to run it? He's not being very specific, which, A, makes me think he's probably not going to do it very much. It was kind of like a loose threat. And second, there's no real plan behind that. There's no real, idea of how that would actually work and go down in reality. So I think that needs to be cleared up. That needs to be specified. And I think it needs to be done. I would love for us to be running Venezuela. So let's look at the comments. Yeah, so Juliet says she's heard of a lot of people who have moved here from there, been friends and family there that are very happy that the biggest world power is getting involved and taking down the bad government. Yeah. So I put a short on this. There's literally videos all over the internet of what happened when Venezuelans around the world and in Venezuela learned that Maduro was gone. It was like a national holiday for them. They're like celebrating in the streets, and there's massive crowds of them just taking a holiday. They love it. And of course, we need to take that from the people on the ground actually suffering those things, and not from the suits in DC who have never stepped in Venezuela or been under a tyrannical dictatorship a day in their life. Obviously, we need to listen to those people, and those people are happy about it. So Noah Morin says, what are your thoughts on trying to ally with Russia and finding common interests so that they have less reason to attack us? So Herbert Hoover in Freedom Betrayed says something really interesting. Herbert was an isolationist. He didn't believe the U.S. should have gotten involved in World War II, which is interesting. That's a different debate on itself. But he says in World War II, if we had not allied ourselves with Russia, which eventually turned out to be the greater evil between Russia and between Stalin and Hitler, Stalin ended up being the greater evil. But in World War II, we didn't really know that yet, so we allied ourselves with Russia. We allied ourselves with Stalin to stop Hitler. He says that's not a good idea. He says we should have let Russia and Stalin and Hitler essentially destroy each other and just stayed out of it. I disagree with that thinking. I think we should have gotten involved, and I think to some point we should have formed alliances. But I also don't like the fact that we formed an alliance with Stalin, who ended up being the significantly worse of the two dictators. I think we're looking at a very similar situation right now with Russia and China. They both hate us. They're both somewhat allied, but it's also on rocky ground. It's, the question is, who do you think is the greater evil? And maybe we could not withstand Russia and China both attacking us at once, but we can divide them and then defeat one. And while the other's weakened, we can, and, so like, if we allied ourselves with Russia, China came at us and finally decided to declare war. Not that they haven't been conducting, covert war on us for a long time, but openly declare war, and we beat them, which I think we could, if we had a president like Trump in. And then while China was out of the picture and Russia wasn't allied with them and they weren't strong, we could also effectively neutralize that threat. So I think we should, I hesitate because I know Russia is bad and I know Russia is evil, and I don't like Vladimir Putin. I don't like a lot of the stuff they do, but it may be something that's necessary, allying with Russia and finding common interests so that they have less reason to attack us. Yeah, I agree completely, Marissa. Specification is everything. That's the hallmark of an honest person versus a dishonest person. The honest person will tell you who they is. So this is something I hear all the time. People, and I know I pick on Candace Owens a lot, but even for people who support her, you have to admit she is really, really bad at this. She will say they just over and over and over and over and over again in all these theories that she has, and she won't tell you who she's talking about. Or if she does, it's a very vague reference. And then by the time she's gotten to the 51st they, it's shifted. And it's like, okay, you're not being honest. If you're being honest, you would give us names, you'd give us people, you'd give us organizations. That's something Ben Shapiro was talking about in a speech at AmFest 2025 that I really appreciated. Austin says this may be a slightly off-topic question, which I don't know. That's on topic. I think that's on topic. He says hypothetically, let's say the United States is invaded and major political states are overtaken. What do you think would happen? Which states would side with the invaders? That's interesting. It depends on who's invading. I think if, yeah, the trouble is you don't really know like who's invading. Let's say China invades the U.S. I think there would be states that may side with them. We're to the point in the country where we are so unbelievably divided that there are leftist politicians who are running states who genuinely hate our nation, and conservative politicians who are also running states who genuinely hate the leftists, and rightly so, I would say. So I think it's possible that some liberal states would side with them. I mean, if China attacked the East Coast, maybe like New York and Maine would just give up the fight. I feel like California would give up the fight. I hate saying that because I'm a Californian, but I feel like we would just give up the fight. And there's always going to be crazy people who would help, like radicals all over the place who genuinely hate America. And then, of course, people who have come in through immigration who are actively enemies of the United States that we just don't know about, who aren't here. I mean, who are here, but we don't know they're here. So I think it would be more of like a general thing, and a lot of people would be there would be a lot of like radicals supporting the invaders that would be interspersed throughout the states. But again, if it was like specific states, New York, Maine, California, Minnesota, they have a lot of smallies there. CJ says millions of Venezuelans protest against the US after the kidnapping. See, I haven't heard that. I haven't even heard that coming from the new right. So I'd be interested as to your sources for that. And I'm very willing again to say that the Venezuelan thing was wrong and that the Venezuelans weren't happy with it, but I need to see proof and evidence of that. Juliette says Candace will say they when she doesn't know, or to reference the cabal, shadow organizations, man behind the curtain, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, so I get using so in English grammar, you use they because you've just recently referenced who it is that you're talking about. And it's very clear to everybody who it is you're talking about. So if she said the cabal did such and such, and they did such and such, and they did such and such, and they did such and such, and they're bad. Okay, well that's a completely legitimate use of they. And I'm not referencing that use of they. What I'm talking about is especially for people that are new to the podcast or for people who aren't super into her and don't know what's going on. It feels very fluffy and it feels very like there isn't solid stuff there. I know this is something it's easy to do because it's verbal laziness. I know I've struggled with this in my podcast episodes before. There is a whole podcast episode, I'm not joking, that I've deleted because for 10 minutes straight I was referencing someone and I never actually gave the original reference. I was just saying they the whole time, and it still made sense. Like I think it was still going to make sense, but I was like, they're just not going to know who I'm talking about at all. And I feel like that's what she's doing all the time. At least every time I've listened to her episodes, maybe she didn't used to do that. Maybe this is something that's new. But yeah, deep state definitely. But again, specification. So deep state can mean a bunch of things. I would be more, maybe this is a personal preference thing, but I would want to hear more agents, 3-letter agencies. Name the agency, name the person, name the such and such. If you don't know, give your best guess. Okay. I'm gonna move on because we're not very far into this. Okay. Juliette says, so this is a question that was asked previously. Regardless of specifically who killed Charlie Kirk or the theories surrounding his death, do you think the left were actually the ones to kill him, or do you think he actually upset people on the right? My answer is yes. So the left did kill him, I believe. I firmly believe Tyler Robinson killed him. I recognize that the majority of the evidence has not come out yet, and I'm operating on like 5% of the evidence. But with everything I've seen so far, I think Tyler Robinson did it. We're going to see. I'm very willing to change that position. I hold a lot of conspiracy theory positions, and I'm fine with that. I have no aversion to it. I have no aversion to the truth. But from everything I've seen, I think Tyler Robinson did it. So I think the left did actually kill him because Tyler Robinson would be on the left. And I think he was egged on by a lot of politicians and people who hate Charlie and consistently posted really horrible things about Charlie and encouraged people to do violence against him. And at the same time, I think he did upset people on the right. So Charlie was, I don't think a lot of people recognize this until after his death, but Charlie was he was the leader of the conservative movement. He had a massive following, and he was uniting. He was being the mature person in the room and uniting the new right and the old guard. And when he was gone, as you could tell, those two factions started going at it again. So I think in so doing, in trying to unite both sides of the right, he made some people really, really angry while he was still alive. Nick Fuentes would be an example, even though I don't believe he's really on the right. He blurs so much with the left. It's like, I don't know where you are, dude. It's a bit much. I don't know what's going on. I don't even know what his real political views are. And I think I would argue the same for Tucker Carlson. I'm not 100% sure. But the prominent voices on the new right definitely were a little upset with him. And I think a lot of the prominent voices in the old guard were also maybe not upset is the right word, but frustrated maybe. People who weren't working closely with him, people who don't share his religious views because they didn't want to be united with the other side of the movement. But maybe they did it just to go along, get along, and Charlie was able to hold it together. Those are my thoughts. Juliette also says, we got a bunch of questions. I've got I've got a bunch from Juliette here from before the live stream started. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? In 5 years, I'm 21. I think 21, yeah, because I'm 16 right now. So probably still in college, getting a graduate degree, maybe at Masters or Hillsdale. And hopefully with a much bigger platform on Substack and YouTube and Medium and across the podcast platforms. But, we'll see. The Lord's got, obviously, his plans for me, and I'm sure stuff is going to be a lot different than I'm expecting. But that's where I would expect to be in 5 years. In college, still finishing up some degrees. Okay, Juliette also asked, what is the last fiction book you read and your most informational or life-changing nonfiction book aside from the Bible? The last fiction book I read was Countdown Zero by Chris Rylander. If you guys haven't read that, it's a super funny, super entertaining, clean series about this secret agent kid, and his name is incidentally Carson. That definitely is not why I like the series so much. Promise. But his name's Carson Fender. It's not Carson Wagner. But it's really, I go through it every 6 months. It's the Codename Conspiracy is the name of the series. Chris Rylander wrote The Fourth Stall too, which is really funny, really entertaining. He's a good writer. The most informational or life-changing book, I wrote down a couple titles. It's Good to Be a Man by Michael Foster, Right Wing Revolution by Charlie Kirk, Shepherds for Sale by Megan Basham, Phenomena by Annie Jacobsen, and Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Those would be my answers. I past that, I can't get those five. I can't choose one of those 5 titles as the most informational and most life-changing book. So I would recommend all those if you want good books. Let's look at the comments. Yeah, Mickey, definitely. She is lazy with her language. Gotcha, Juliet, definitely. Yeah, and that's fair. And again, I'm very inclined to like I'm open to believing anything really about Charlie's assassination, just as long as there's evidence for it, because I'm not going to believe something without evidence. CJ asks, "How are they on the left?" I'm assuming he's talking about my comment about Nick. So I don't know if you've ever seen a horseshoe diagram. I think I've shown this on my podcast before. But if you imagine a horseshoe, you've got the right side. It's the horseshoe, like, is the uh, symbol of the political spectrum. Like, it's a physical symbol of the political spectrum. The right side of the horseshoe would be the right right wing movement. Left side would be the left wing movement. And like centrist people who are neither on neither side would be at the top of the horseshoe. So the farther left, the farther right or left that you go on the horseshoe, the more those two ends start curving around back towards each other, and eventually they meet. So the more radical left you get, the more authoritarian you get, and the more like pro tyrant. And Nick Fuente openly praises Stalin and Hitler in his podcast. Um, and the further right, like Nick Fuentes, I think he started out as a conservative, and then he's gone very, very far right. The more fascist you get, but also the more authoritarian, and the more pro tyrants, and the more pro tons of government control. And eventually, the two just blur, and you don't really know. You're like, are you a conservative anymore? Are you a liberal anymore? No, you're not either. You're a completely different thing now. Katie says masters 100%. Yeah, it's a great college. I'm doing dual enrollment with them right now. And I love it. Juliet says, yay, Hillsdale. Hillsdale Online. Yes, CJ, Hillsdale Online is awesome. If you guys don't know about Hillsdale Online, this is not sponsored, but if you want to learn more from like reliable conservative Christian sources about the Constitution and politics and theology and all sorts of very interesting topics, you can go. I think it's online.hillsdale.edu, and they have like a ton of free courses. I think there's like 30 free courses that are giving you all the same information you'd learn in a college course. It's not for credit, but they're amazing. Charlie Kirk loved them. He went through all of them before he died. Mickey, have you read Charlie Kirk's new book? Stop in the Name of God. I have not, but I did buy it. If that's what you're talking about. Austin says, Biden question here. What's your favorite color and ice cream flavor? My favorite color is dark blue. My favorite flavor is cookie dough. Cookie dough, probably. Yes, Katie, I could send out those titles. I'll put them in the description of this live video when I put it out on YouTube and Substack and podcast. The Vanishing American Adult by Ben Sass is also a really good nonfiction. Yeah, I like Ben Sass. I think he's good. Okay. Yes, CJ, agreed. A lot of his recent views are not America first. Okay, I think I'm caught up on the questions. I just want to say, I don't know what's going on. I guess doing a live stream is the key to getting a bunch of new subscribers, but I've gotten like 10 emails in the past 20 minutes, new subscriber emails. I don't know where those are coming from. Maybe you guys watching right now. I'm not sure. Okay, so I got more questions from Juliet from before the live stream started. She says, cats or dogs? Dogs, definitely, 100%. I don't like cats, though they can be cute sometimes. Have you ever had a pet? Yes, I have had a pet, a hamster. That's the only one I've ever had. I got her when I was 11, and then she ended up dying when I was 12. Little albino dwarf hamster. So she was completely white and had red eyes that were like the creepiest thing ever. It was interesting. It was interesting. Ford or Chevy? Yeah, we got a bunch of playful questions here. Ford or Chevy? Chevy, 100%. And if you disagree, get out. No, I'm just kidding. You could stay. You could stay. I just want to say though, I saw this amazing meme about Ford the other day, and it went something like the tagline went something like, "Oh look, Ford is making a heated tailgate to keep your hands warm while you're pushing it home," or something along those lines. Yeah, it's great. So I'm very much a Chevy fan. I think the Chevy Silverado is like the best truck in existence. And Toyota's good too. I don't like Ford at all. Some adaptions of the F-250 can be good. They can look good. That doesn't mean they're good cars, but they can look good. I might consider buying one like when I'm older. But Juliette also asked, if you were president of the United States tomorrow, what is the first thing you would do? Or what is the first thing I wouldn't do? So I would have like a billion things ready, like executive orders and executive actions in general ready before I came in. So they would all get signed like the first day. So that might take me a minute because I wouldn't use the auto pen. The auto pen's got a really bad track record. I wonder why. So I wouldn't use that. I'd physically sign all of them, of course. But man, there's so many pressing issues from so many different areas. It's like, where do you even begin? You know, you prosecute half of Congress. Actually, not half. It's like 75% of Congress. A lot of Republicans need to be prosecuted too. Honestly, the first thing I'd probably do is put some sort. I don't know what legal powers the president has, but the president is the boss of the Department of Education. So I would probably put an emergency stop on all funds to all schools, all colleges, all public schools, all everything that has even a whiff of a professor who teaches something that's not, teaches political correctness, essentially, and, anybody woke. I would immediately end all federal funding. I think that is the most key battleground that we can fight in. That's where Charlie was fighting. Like, that is where the left, the long march to the institutions. I believe Saul Alinsky came up with that in Rules for Radicals. But the long march to the institutions is the way to take over a country. And a long time ago, the left started using that tactic, and they took over our institutions slowly. And now we have a generation who thinks that Joe Biden is a good president, and that men can become women, and that murdering babies in cold blood is cool. We like that. We're America. We're the land of the free, home of the brave. That's what the colleges have done. That's what the public schools have done. That is the central battleground. So I think I would go after those like I would have fun going after those. It'd be extremely entertaining, and I know I'm doing a great amount of good while I'm suing them, and I'm stopping all federal funds and firing people and just cleaning out the swamp, draining the swamp in terms of the Department of Education. So that'd be the first thing I'd focus on. Sydney asks, best and worst book to movie adaptation. The worst is second two Narnia movies. I actually haven't seen them, but I've read like the Wikipedia plot on them, and other people have told me about them, and it's horrific. They destroyed the book. It's like, dude, what did you even... that one actually makes me angry. Like, I don't know what Hollywood was thinking, but that thing it's an abomination. That should be taken off the internet. Taken off all streaming services. Both of them. Those second two movies. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is really good, though. They didn't go off board with those. The best... probably Lord of the Rings. They're pretty close, to the book. I still like the book better just because it's the book. But the Lord of the Rings movies are pretty good. They follow the book pretty closely. As soon as we've got a billion comments come in, let me go back and look at them. Juliette said, well, as long as you didn't have two hamsters and lose one. Okay, I'm going to guess what that's implying. I'm going to guess what that's implying because I know what dwarf hamsters do, especially mother dwarf hamsters when they get stressed. So I think I know what you're talking about. Make the Groypers Congress. Well, I was thinking of deporting the Groypers. So, I don't know. They're honestly, to be fair, they're probably more sane than the left. I'd probably be fine with them in my administration, but I'm not sure. Mickey asks, what are your thoughts on Gavin Newsom? I feel like if he was more aware of the issues, he would not be a Democrat. He's just absolutely oblivious to everything, smiling like his only job as a politician is to be a pretty face. I would disagree. I would disagree strongly as a Californian. He is absolutely spineless, and he knows exactly what's going on. He did a recent episode with Ben Shapiro. It just came out like 2 days ago, and I just started listening to it, and it's good because like if you're someone on the left and you're inviting a conservative on your podcast, the last conservative you want to invite is Ben Shapiro. He will destroy you. You cannot beat that guy in a debate. You can't beat him in anything. He's just way too smart and way too quick on his feet. And Gavin is the quintessential politician, and he was claiming that California has been cooperative with ICE the whole time, which is a blatant lie. Every police department in California has a page on their website now that says we are not allowed to cooperate with ICE. The California DOJ refuses to cooperate with ICE. Gavin has made it impossible for ICE agents to operate safely in California by requiring them to remove their face masks. He actively prosecutes them when they do operate in California. He is prosecuting local law enforcement agencies that are supporting ICE and defying the governor's orders. And he has threatened to arrest ICE agents in LA. So I think he knows exactly what's going on. I think he is a liar. And I think he is trying to angle and get into the Democratic National Convention as a radical. I don't know what he actually believes. He may not actually believe any of this. But I think he's trying to get in as a radical so he can get support from the most left-wing radical side of the party and eventually be elected president. In general, he's just really slimy and has a he's a quintessential politician. He's just out for his own good. But I think he's very aware of the issues. 20 years till I can run. Yeah, you have to be 45, I believe. So, yeah, about 20 years, give or take. And in the meantime, I'm doing this. Mickey says, my point is that he's very unaware of what's going on, shaking hands, not paying attention. He said it himself. He has no idea the amount of shoplifting going on in California. He doesn't understand economics enough to help anything. I would agree. I don't think he understands economics, but I think he does know about the shoplifting and stuff. Like everybody knows California's like the worst state in the nation. Homeless people everywhere. Shoplifting is crazy. Police can't do their jobs. Prices are unbelievable. They're through the roof. And Californians have protested many, many times. And I know he's seen it. I know he sees everyone else in the nation making fun of California. Okay, that is what the hamster comment meant. Yes, okay. Then we will let sleeping dogs lie on that one then. CJ says, I know a few folks that could destroy Ben in a debate. CJ, I would love to see it. My money would be on Ben Shapiro every time. But I'm willing to stand corrected, but I would love to see it. Austin asks, do you think California would split from the US at any point? More like the US would split from California. I think the US might split from California. I think that would be like something Trump might do or try to do if he like ran for a third term and got radicalized enough and got crazy enough and obsessed with his own legacy enough. Yeah. I think the US might split from California. California from the US, no. That's not going to happen. The issue is that California is we're dependent on the rest of the nation, even though it may not seem that we are. So we have the 5th largest economy in the world, and numbers 1 through 4 are countries that are way bigger than we are. So we have a massive, very independent economy, but we also can't survive without the rest of the nation. And to tell the truth, California is like, it is genuinely burning to the ground. Like it's literally burning to the ground because Newsom refuses to let Cal Fire have any water because it would hurt salmon up in Northern California. Yes, I'm not joking. So there's that going on. So California is literally burning down. There's wildfires all over the place. It's a huge problem here, but we are tens of billions of dollars into debt, and we are just we're crumbling. We wouldn't, even if we split from the union, it'd be like 3 minutes where we'd survive on our own before we'd be begging to be let back in. So no, I don't think that would ever happen. Mickey says 36 for presidential campaign. Oh, okay. Well, that I can. Yes, 20 years. That works. That's younger than I thought. That's good. Means I don't have to wait as long. Will says that atheist dude beat Ben when talking about ancient slavery in the Bible. Okay, so let me clarify what I mean about Ben. When it comes to religion and when it comes to anything outside of politics, he is pretty much worthless because he's a Jew. He doesn't really understand what's going on. And I think I know a lot of Christians, normal Christians, that could beat him in a debate. But when it comes to politics, he is, I think, one of the smartest people alive on the planet right now and one of the best debaters. And I think he'd absolutely destroy like anyone. The U.S. open to military landings in California. That's an interesting thought, actually. That's an interesting thought, Austin. Yeah, because I think we can't run ourselves. Like if we split and China was like, okay, we need a base to, get into the rest of the United States, I think we could be used by them. And they're not weaklings. China is not a weakling. They would be able to run the economy. They would be able to protect us from wildfires and do all those sorts of things that Gavin can't do. So I think that would be a scary prospect, but I think it's a possible one if the U.S. split from California. Hannah says, if you could live in any state or country, what would it be? Okay, folks, let me hear 3 cheers for Moscow, Idaho. Just saying. Moscow, maybe. I've never even been there, but it's like I know tons of people up there. They have an amazing church. Doug Wilson's up there. A lot of very big names in the Reform movement are up there. And Idaho's a great state to live in. Yeah, Taylor's there right now in NSA. Mickey said, "Who do you think should be the 2028 Republican nominee?" Okay, so this is super important. It's going to be JD Vance. I don't think there's any question. It's going to be JD Vance. He's extremely charismatic. He's extremely he's one of the few politicians I've ever seen who's not a politician. He strikes you as a very normal person. He's, tons of people love him. Who would I support? I support Vance. Yeah. If I'm voting between Vance and Kamala Harris, I support Vance. If I'm voting between Vance and Tucker Carlson, I support Vance. And I could name a lot of other names on the other side. The problem is that Vance has a weird isolationist streak that I don't like, and I think is dangerous. Like he's been trying to stop Trump from getting involved in Iran, which I don't agree with. But again, I think that's a minor thing in terms of in terms of the general political scene. That's a mild disagreement, and I would happily vote for him over a leftist or even a lot of people on the right. Yeah, I agree, Juliette. That's the kind of feeling I get from him. Like he's kind of waiting, and he's definitely more on the new right, which, as you guys know, I don't support in any way whatsoever. I think they're dangerous. The leaders, at least. I'm not saying all the people are dangerous, but I think the leaders are. If it was between Nick Fuentes and Newsom, who would you vote for? I'd vote for oh gosh. Okay. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. I would say I I almost said Newsom. And then I caught myself. I'm like, okay, who would I actually vote for? I would be forced to vote for Fuentes. It would not be. Yeah, definitely. So I wouldn't not vote. I would not vote. Because if you're not voting, then you're automatically voting for the worst candidate, is my belief. Because you're allowing them to win if they do win. I think I would vote for Fuentes. I don't like Fuentes at all. I don't think he's a good person. I don't think he's a Christian. I think he's very dumb politically in a lot of ways. But at least he's not a slimeball politician. He's got that going for him. Personally, if I had exactly, Hannah, I agree. You always have the responsibility to vote, even if it's for the lesser evil. Yeah, there is that, Will. But I mean, there are gay conservatives, and I'm open to voting. I don't agree with them. I think they're living a sinful lifestyle. I think it's wrong. But I'm open to voting for them. If the other option is Kamala Harris. Now back to the 2028 question. like who I guess would be the ideal candidate. I would love to see Ron DeSantis get up there. I'd love to see Marco Rubio get up there and actually have a chance at winning. I would have loved to have seen Charlie Kirk get up there. I mean, guys, I think we all knew he was going to be the president at some point. It's just it's not a matter of, it's not if, it's when. I would have loved to seen Charlie Kirk get up there, but I don't think he's going to be. But yeah, Marco Rubio, JD Vance, Pete Hegseth. I think that any of those would be really, really awesome. I'd support Abbott making a run for it too, the governor of Texas. Okay, I'm gonna move on with the previous questions real quick, and then we'll go back to the comments. We're almost done, but this can go for as long as people want to stay, and I've got time. I've got a long time, so I'd like to try to cap it around like an hour and I don't know, hour and 10 minutes maybe. Okay, Eliza has some interesting questions for us. On a theological note, she says, "Why do you think so much of Gen Z is leaning towards Catholicism and Orthodoxy?" Because the evangelical church in America, I cannot say this enough, has failed them. It has become a weak, pacifistic sports club. Like, not to pick on sports clubs, but I mean, it's become like a hangout. There's no riff. There's no power there. There is no. Jesus isn't there. He's not there. I'm sorry. It's like I wish I didn't have to say that, but I do have to say it. He's not there. The majority of evangelical churches that you can go in America, God is not there. He's not with them. They're doing something wrong, or they've displeased him, or we have, as a nation as a whole, displeased him. The churches are not alive. They're full of people who are living in unrepentant sin. The pastors are not preaching the gospel. Everybody's scared of political correctness. Even in the good evangelical churches, like ones that I would go to, they're still dead. There's no life there. We need to find the balance. Of course, people frame it as, well, it's a constant fight between the Pentecostals on one side, who are very obsessed with life and with vitality and with the Holy Spirit and with works and things like that. The livelier side of Christianity, to put it mildly. But they don't focus on theology in this. They get a lot of stuff wrong with that. And likewise, my side, the more traditional Orthodox Reformed side, is obsessed with theology and with knowledge and with preaching and learning. And we totally forget that there's a whole other side to Christianity, which is the real, extremely powerful, extremely convicting, life-changing power of the Holy Spirit. They're both sides are falling into ditches. And if we could find a way to bring those together, I think Gen Z would come back to the church. But they're not. And so they're saying, okay, the evangelicals have nothing going for them, so we're just going to walk over to the Catholic Church, which at least has this feel of like grand, solemn weightiness that you don't get in the evangelical church and you don't get in the traditional Reformed church. And I think that's why they're turning to Orthodoxy. Not to pick on Arminians, because I believe they're Christians, but the general Arminian attitude of the evangelical church and the general soft attitude of the evangelical church, Gen Z looks at that and they're like, I don't want to go there. There's nothing going for me. I want a powerful God. I want a big God. And so they go to more Orthodox churches. Not saying that all Orthodox churches are Calvinistic and big God. A lot of them are not, including the Catholics. But they want something. They want strong drink, and all that evangelicals in America are offering them right now is water, very thin water. I don't know if that's a problem that'll ever be solved. I hope it's solved in my lifetime, and we see Gen Z coming back to Jesus in terms of becoming evangelicals. But who knows? And that was a bit of a rant. So let's look at the comments. I open the thread and all I see is Margot saying original sin, baby. That's great. I love you guys. You guys are awesome. You're extremely funny. Okay. Eliza also asks, how might the CREC keep itself from becoming a channel into those heavily liturgical, rich, and beautiful traditions? First off, it sounds like she just anticipated what my answer to the first question was going to be, which is great. Let me give some context for those of you who aren't involved in the traditional Reformed setting. There's a huge spectrum of Presbyterian denominations. The Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches the one that I find myself most closely aligned with, I'm not in it. I'm in the OPC, the Orthodox Presbyterian Church, but the one I find myself most closely aligned with would be the CREC. And they have an emphasis on going closer to Rome than a lot of other Presbyterians do. So they've got often big ornate buildings, very liturgical services, even more liturgical than a lot of other Presbyterian churches. Their pastors often wear robes, and the white and purple robes is the one I always see. And they wear that thing around their neck. I forget what it is. The little white thing that denotes, a minister. They wear that around their neck, which makes them look like a priest, sort of. They call Eucharist. This isn't every CREC church. There are a range of CREC churches, but that's kind of what the CREC is known for. So it's really important that we don't accidentally go back to Catholicism. We separated from Catholicism in the Reformation because we're not Catholics. We're Protestants. And there may be Catholics in here, and that's a whole different debate. But as a Protestant, talking as a Protestant, evangelical, we separated from the Catholics because we are not Catholics. And we need to not go back to Catholicism because it's got big problems. And I think the CREC may be a little too close to going back. But I will say this. How can the CREC keep itself from going back? Well, visuals are everything. So the CREC can say, we're not Catholics all they want, but their actions matter more than their words. So I think they need to somewhat, it would be a decision for more intelligent people than me, more wise church leaders than me to determine how much. But they need to step away from the visuals. They need to step away from the robes, the excessive weightiness, and I'll admit beauty of their services and liturgy, and make it more evangelical, make it more faith focused, more a more free service. Because there needs to be a distinction between us and the Catholics that's not just theology. You can believe whatever you want, and people aren't going to see it. They're going to walk into your church and they're going to see the setup, and they're going to start thinking, okay, Catholicism isn't all that different. And then we'll have people, it'll be the gateway drug into Catholicism, which is not good. Not good. So that's one way I think the CREC could step away from that. I think it's the most important way. Sorry, the most important way. And we got 3 more quick questions. I'll answer these fast and then get to the comments and see what y'all have waiting for me. I'm a little scared because I'm out of the tab while I'm doing this. Eliza decided, she decided to just go for it and asked thoughts on the 19th Amendment. So the 19th Amendment is the amendment that allows women voting rights. And it was put in place in the 20th century. For context, single women are the most evil voting bloc in America as a whole. If they were removed, the Democrat Party would collapse, abortion would be over, the legality of transgender surgeries would be over, many very, very evil things would be over. The religion of woke would collapse. So the question is, what's evil? I don't want women to not be able to vote. I'll just say that. I don't want seeing women not be able to vote. They're American citizens. I've heard a lot of people arguing for household voting. The man votes, the head of the household votes, or the woman votes if she's the head of the household, if there isn't a man in the picture. And it's 1 vote per household. It's an interesting idea, but I don't think it's feasible in our society today. I think too many people would rebel against that. Too many people would break it. And I don't think it's feasible as a long-term solution. But what I see as a short-term solution is accepting the lesser evil in favor of the greater evil. The greater evil is the continued legality of abortion and of the religion of woke and of transgender surgeries and of our kids in public schools, not our kids, I'm not a parent, but kids in public schools being taught things that are absolutely horrendous. And the Democrat Party continuing to exist, which is equally as horrendous. That is the greater evil. So I'm willing to accept a lesser evil to end all that. And that lesser evil may just be repealing the 19th Amendment. It would fix a lot of things. Not saying I like it. I'm not comfortable with it. And I never will be. But I think that would be a massive and very easy solution to a lot of the problems we see in America. So That's my thoughts on the 19th Amendment. I think, yes, let's repeal it. That hurts. I don't like having to say that at all. And I know I'll lose people there, but it's either the options are either women get to vote or babies are murdered in the womb and their organs sold in the black market. So I'll go with women not being able to vote. Thank you very much. That's my opinion. Two more quick questions. If you could choose one question for the entire world to ask itself every day, this is also from Eliza, what would that be? It has to be a single sentence. I wrote this down. My question would be that everybody needs to ask themselves every day, is everything that we are about to do today actually positively building towards a Christian world that pleases God? That'd be the question. Not just does it align itself with the will of God? Is it building towards the kingdom? Is it building towards the Great Commission? Is it in support of the Great Commission? And is it building towards a world that God would be happy with, that he could come down and live in? So that would be my question. And our final question, guys, I did not know it was going to take this long to get through this. But my final question that I got before I started the live stream was, what made you want to get into politics and talking about it, especially in a biblical worldview? And this is from Marissa. Good question. I've always kind of been interested in politics. You know, they tell you when you like sign up for a new job or go to a new school or something, they're like, you can talk about whatever you want, but there are only two topics that are taboo here: politics and religion. We don't talk about politics and religion. We just love each other. We let stuff fly, and we talk specifically about, our work or our school or whatever it is. And politics and religion are no topics here. It's not really things you're allowed to mention. For me, who unfortunately has an extremely contrarian streak, being an ENTP debater, look that up on 16personalities.com. Quick plug for 16personalities.com. I have a strong contrarian streak, so I see that, and I go, why? Like, seriously, why? If they're telling you not to talk about something, then that thing is probably worth talking about. And as it turns out, politics and religion are the most important things there are. The most important things. How do we rule ourselves? And who's going to be in charge? And what are the rules of the public square going to be? And where do we go after we die? Why do we exist? Who is God? Does God exist? What is out there? They're the most important questions you could possibly ask. It's like nothing else matters. Who cares what you had today when you got up and, what you had for breakfast? Who cares how much you made last year? Or what, I tried to think of an example and I almost came up with a political example. Who cares how many books you read? Or how good you are, or what movie you made? None of that matters. What matters is immediately here, how are we going to rule ourselves? Nothing could affect your life more than that. And why do we exist? Where are we going to go after we die? Who is God? Is the world so broken and messed up? So I've always been, I want to answer those questions. And I've seen these people trying to stop us from answering those questions. And my response to that is, well, I'm going to start a podcast and I'm going to start talking about those questions because you said not to. And I think that is fundamental to a free society. And that's why I do what I do, because I think if we don't, and Charlie Kirk thought this, and I learned this from him, if we don't, free speech is the foundation for everything else. If we're not allowed to, ultimately guns are. If we're not allowed to have guns, we can't defend any of the other freedoms. But ultimately, free speech is the foundation. If we're not allowed to speak our minds, then anyone could do whatever they want to us. And that's not good. It is the hallmark of a free society, free speech, and it is the hallmark of a country where the people can, have civil discourse. It's a hallmark of a healthy country. People can have civil discourse. They can debate ideas. They can discuss them. They can weigh them against evidence. And in the end, they have the freedom to pick whatever they choose, whatever they think is best. That's what a healthy country looks like. That's what a healthy society looks like. And so all of that kind of combined seemed to me to be like, well, what better thing could you pursue than devoting your life, or maybe not your life, but just as much time as you can to showing people the truth and showing people, talking about politics and religion, these two subjects that we're not allowed to talk about, and trying to seek truth in those. As Isabel Brown puts it, I think this is the motto for show, seeking truth to save the West, which I'm totally not jealous of. Like, I wish I had got that first. Don't tell her I said that or anything, but I wish I had got that first. I didn't, and I'm maybe a little bitter over that, but yeah, and especially in a biblical worldview. Obviously, religion has everything to do with politics. Christianity has everything to do with politics. Jesus has everything to do with politics. Christ is Lord. He is Lord of Hollywood. He is Lord of Wall Street. He is Lord of Silicon Valley. And he is Lord of Washington, D.C. And I'm a Christian. I believe that. I believe it enough to die for it. And I believe it so much that I'm willing to spend, obviously this pales in comparison to dying for it or something, but spend 4 or 5 hours every week talking about it on a podcast and doing stuff like this and writing content and applying it to politics, because he's Lord of politics just as much as he is Lord of everything else. So that, I guess, would be the last question on the list. So 1 second. I need to plug in my computer because it is dying. And let me know if I start to get glitchy. I'm going to try to close down a couple apps I have here to make it not as glitchy. But it's possible it will. My computer, I have an older Mac, and it's started doing this funny thing where when I plug it in, everything slows down. Okay, we should be good. So let's look through the chat and see what you guys have to say. And you have said a lot. Okay. Taylor asks, what is your opinion on space exploration? I love it, and I want to be the first person on Mars. I mean, that would be cool. That'd be awesome, being the first person on Mars. I think it's very much something to be invested in. Proverb says, oh gosh, I'm not going to remember the quote, but it's something that's, the king searches out mysteries or something, and it frames it as a very good. We are naturally curious as humans. God has given us the ability to be curious and the ability to search things out. And I think we're misusing our God-given abilities if we don't be curious about the world and about space and go to Mars and go to Venus and go to the moon and explore. And to that end, subjugate all of it to the dominion of Jesus Christ. I want a Christian flag on Mars, even if that means I have to be the one to plant it there. Yeah, I agree, Juliette. Space exploration is very important strategically. Margot says, reminds me of Evan Jellyfish. Yep, yeah. Very good book. Yes, Juliette, churches do target the wrong issues these days. We have whatever our pet peeve is, we target that, and we don't target the actual things that matter. And if you want to see why this is so important, what's actually going behind it, read Shepherds for Sale by Megan Basham. Hannah says, everyone in evangelical churches are afraid of offending people. Yep. Another good book, Sin of Empathy by Joe Rigney. That explains, the why evangelicals are so afraid of offending people, why we want to empathize with them, and why that will literally be the end of the world. Okay, Mickey asks, what are your thoughts on Hitler? Psychopath, Parkinson's disorder, high on meth 24/7. Is evil a trait we are born with? So there's two questions there. The first is, what are my thoughts on Hitler? Well, he was demon possessed, I believe. I don't think I've heard him speak, and it's an experience. It's like first off, he is an extremely charismatic, extremely powerful speaker. But you hear him speak and you're like, that is not human. The power is unreal. And I understand why an entire country followed him right into battle and doing horrific, atrocious things that they never should have done. He was an incredibly powerful leader, and I think there's demonic power behind it. 100%. So That may have been mixed with some drugs and some mental disorders. But then the second part of that question is evil a trait we're born with? So this is the nature versus nurture argument. So are we born sinful, or do our circumstances cause us to be sinful? Or vice versa. Are we born good, or do our circumstances make us good? So as a Christian, obviously, my first and foremost answer is we're born evil. Adam and Eve fell, and because Adam was the federal head of the human race, he cursed us all to sin. And so every baby that is born is depraved, totally depraved. And that doesn't mean that every part of him is as depraved as it could possibly be. Total depravity means that every part of him is infected somehow. So that's total depravity. I believe that. I affirm that 100%. It is clearly taught in the Bible. So yes, we are born with sin, but at the same time, your nurture, what's going on around you as you grow up, contributes a massive amount. I think it's possible it may contribute more than the sinful nature. Hannah says, what are your thoughts on denominations? I have always felt they portrayed an image of church division to others, and it gives a sense of dishonesty because we are called to be one, but I can't agree on doctrine and theology. That's a good question. So doctrine and theology are the most important parts of the Christian faith, outside of, personal piety and obedience to God. And it's literally life and death. So I would encourage you to look at denominations as, rather than being divisive organizations, look at them as being organizations that are seeking to preserve the truth by cutting cancer out of the body. If you have a leg that's infected and you have to amputate it or it'll kill you, you got to cut off the leg. That's going to divide your body, but it has to be done. It's either that or you're dead. I would encourage you to look at it that way, because that's actually a lot of what's going on when we talk about denominational infighting. Agreed, Juliette. So very interesting study here. So Juliette says, I do think some specific sin or psychological issues are definitely genetic, though, like from generation to generation. Jesus says, or God says, he's going to visit this iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generations. And there's an interesting part of genetics and science, I believe it may be called like cytogenetics or something along those lines, where they have determined that decisions that the mother makes that would seem to have nothing to do with the baby that she has, like, she's not drinking, she's not taking drugs, not any of that. Decisions that she makes that are like moral decisions are actually changing the DNA of the baby to the third and fourth generations. Coincidence? I think not. Okay. Mickey says, are some people more evil than others, though? And are they inherently born with that evil that is advanced beyond normal humanities? I don't believe so. I'm open to hearing arguments about that, but I believe everyone is born equally depraved. And I believe we are all capable of far more sin than we think we are. Everyone in this room, Christians included, if you were not saved by the grace of Christ, and if you're not restrained, would murder somebody. You would do it. There is not a question in my mind. You would commit adultery. You would be a pathological liar. We are capable of far, far more sin than we realize, and the depravity goes far deeper than we realize. And it's evidenced by the fact that people like Hitler do what they do, and Mussolini and Stalin and others. And yeah, it's a sad truth. And that's why if you haven't already become a Christian and come into a church, joined a faithful Bible believing church, and are seeking to live in communion with God every day, you need to do it, because you can end up in some really scary places. Romans 1 says that people sinned and they rebelled against God, so he gave them a way to far greater sin and much more horrendous, much more disgusting sin than they were doing before. And at that point, they can't really get out of it. They're trapped. Juliet, good to hear. Yes, King's Cross Church is great. I've never been there, but I have many friends that go there and they love it. Thank you for coming, CJ. I know you're already gone, but if you're watching this later, thank you for coming. Enjoyed your questions. I agree, Mickey. I don't think Hitler would be someone that was born more inherently evil. Austin, I align with the OPC on most things. I'm a Paedo-Baptist. I'm a theonomist. I believe in covenant theology. The majority of the OPC agree on that. I'm also pro-Paedo communion. So I baptize babies, I give them communion. I believe that the Old Testament civil law, that's theonomy, should be instituted in modern day America, not the sacrificial or ritual laws, just the civil law as it relates to government and the people. Um, and I'm, I have some very strong theological disagreements with them, but at the same time, I think they're a great denomination in a lot of ways, and they get the majority of it right. I agree, Margot. I think the Catholics are into something with the beautiful architecture and the weightiness of their services. If the Catholics had not ruined it, I seriously think that would be the perfect church, like a church that had all that beauty and all that depth and power and weightiness. And there's nothing inherently wrong with wearing robes while you're preaching a sermon or calling communion the Eucharist or having a super involved liturgy. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, and I like it. I enjoy that sort of thing. I think it's very beautiful. I think it's very solemn, and I think it's fitting for God's people. But the Catholics have also, in a lot of ways, ruined it for us, unfortunately. Margaret says this does not reflect well on us women. Yeah, I mean, I'm not making an individual statement about women. There are a ton of single men who are Democrats as well and are helping support the party. But it's just a factual truth that women, single women, are the Democrats' biggest voting bloc, unfortunately. Yeah, that's correct, Hannah. I've got to include that. Married women tend to be conservative, tend to be Christian, tend to be Republican. Juliette says she thinks the age should be raised. Okay. Yes, partly. But also I think we're raising the ages too much in our culture. Like the I think yeah, we're raising the ages too much for a lot of things, and we need to work on the other end. We need to make kids more mature so they can do more mature things at earlier ages, like drive and drink and get married and go to college and have the freedom to do all that stuff. We need to work on making kids more mature so they can do those things. Um, but yes, as a temporary solution, the age being raised would probably be good. Margot says some people need to stop talking and start making sandwiches. Not gonna lie, I could not agree more. I could not agree more. Yeah, y'all have some pretty awesome comments. Yes, I will host more of these Q&As. I'm thinking I need to do one like maybe every 2 weeks. This has been very, very enjoyable. Margaret wants to know what I had for breakfast. I had like an egg sandwich. So it was like English muffin. It was an English muffin sandwich with an egg and melted cheese in the middle. It was very good. Okay. How would I explain the separation between church and state? Um, First off, let me plug my computer in again. So if it gets glitchy, let me know. So the separation between church and state is possibly the most abused term, aside from Christian nationalism, in the country when it comes to theology. Separation of church and state, I agree with. I love separation of church and state. But I need to clarify something because everybody thinks when I say that, I'm saying separation of God and state. I'm not saying separation of God and state. That should not be done. But separation of the human institution of church and state, those two should be separated. Yes, that's great. They should not be mixed. So I think like the Anglicans are wrong. I don't think the institutional church should be mixed with the state that way. I think it's unhealthy. It leads to a lot of bad things. I am not saying, I cannot emphasize this enough. I am not saying a separation of God and state. God should be in the state 100%. Every leader should be a Christian. It should be required. You shouldn't be able to get into politics without being a Christian first and by professing belief in the ultimate lordship of Jesus Christ. So I don't believe in separation of God and state. I do believe in separation of church and state. Katie says, for over the last 2 years, your Wi-Fi is actually only a little bit better. Yeah. What's hilarious is we moved once or twice, so you'd think it would be better, but it's not. Still the same as when I first joined Logos. Juliette, that's a very good point. She says, the expression willing to die for it bugs me. Dying is easy. Your life ends. Living for something, sharing something, that's how you show your passion and courage. That's how you show what you believe. That's how you risk something. That is absolutely true. Absolutely true. I saw a picture once and it went like, it was someone saying, it was a quote from someone. They were like, I hear so many men say, I would die for my wife and children. But would you live for them? Would you sacrifice every day of your life for them? Would you protect them? Would you care for them? Would you be annoyed with them and still not show it because you have the self-control to not show it? And it just went on with this huge list of things that are way more difficult than a momentary death. Because you got to spend 70 years of your life with these people, right? Or upwards. And sometimes less. But, on average, say you spend 70 years with them. Well, from the moment you're born to the moment you die, Lord willing, you're going to be around your family. And it's way more difficult to live for them. And I'm not talking about specifically families and your wife and children or your husband and children. That'll come later. But your general family as a whole, your friends, you need to live for them. You need to sacrifice for them every single day. And that is much, much harder to do than dying, I think. That's why so many people fail at it. Yep. Good verse, Margot. Greater love hath no man than this, than that a man would lay down his life for his friend. Dying for someone is still amazing. And if you think about it, say you marry somebody, you are dying for them. Because you're going to spend the rest of your life for them, and you're going to spend the rest of your energy for them. All of life is just slow death. If you think about it, you're just dying slowly. It's just not a rapid death. And so you are dying for them. It's just very slow, and it's not quick, and it's not dramatic. Yep, Allie Beth Stuckey does talk a lot about the faults of empathy. Relatable with Allie Beth Stuckey. Yes, you guys need to listen to that podcast too. Another awesome podcast. Okay. Juliette says, hearing more of what I think about the Old Testament law would be interesting. Yeah, maybe I should have a Q&A that's just about theology and Old Testament law and stuff. I also need to, at some point, I know there's like 35 people here, and I can't invite all of you at once, but there are a lot of people in here right now that I would love to have on at some point. So just like because we can do lives with multiple people, multiple hosts at once. So if you get a random DM from me or an email asking if you want to do this, please say yes, because it would be so fun. It'd be so interesting. Hannah asks how I know so much. Thank you, first off. I read a ton. I think that's I don't know if I would say that the majority of what I know comes from what I read. I'll put it that way. And I read a lot. I try to hit about 100 books a year. This year I'm going like all out and I'm trying to get to 200. And I usually hit around 100 books. That's not easy. Actually, that's like, it sounds easier than it is. Every year I tell myself I'm going to hit 100 books. And then by the end of it, I'm like, I have like 2 weeks left in December and I have 20 books to read. And then I end up making it to like 85 or something. But it just takes a lot of discipline. I consume a lot of written content, I guess. That's where the majority of what I know from comes. Kiara, I was not born this way. I don't think. I didn't come out of the room doing live streams on theology. Shepard says, and he's been influenced by me a lot. That's okay. I should kick you out of the live stream for that. Okay. Just worked 8 hours and got 6 to go. Wow. Okay. That's impressive, Turner. Good for you. Austin says, what do you think about these three things? Drinking at 21, but military service at 18 and voting also at 18. Yeah, I don't know why we're trusting people to run our country and we're simultaneously trusting them to drive. Well, okay, let me revise. Let me say that differently. I don't know why we're I think military service and voting and driving is way more important than drinking and way more consequential if you mess up. So I think that doesn't really make sense. Like the drinking age should just be lowered if we're being consistent to 18. Herger says I wouldn't have typed it if I knew he was going to read it all out loud. I don't even know what that means. Like, how would you get to? Turner asked, what comments is he reading? So I was reading a bunch of questions from people before. I asked for questions before I started the live stream, and I got a bunch. Noah says English muffins are a clear violation of America First ideology. I have no idea where you're coming from there. But I love English muffins. Just saying. I think it's very America First. As someone who has, why is there a debate over English muffins? That's like, guys, we're trying to be serious here. No, I'm just kidding. You could be as funny as you want. This is very entertaining reading the chat. Turner says they're good with avocado and bacon. They are. American muffins. American muffins. Okay, what about a muffin that, what about we pass a law requiring all muffins to be like imprinted with an American flag? I'd be down for that. Turner asked, did you buy the mic and stuff with your own money? Yes, my hard-earned money. This mic is for any tech nerds who are curious, this is a Rode Pod mic, USB edition. And I've got a Samson boom arm here, and then can't really see it. Let's see if I can bring it over, but I have a Focusrite Scarlet Solo, which is an audio interface that basically does all the heavy lifting for my mic. Margot says he's broke. Yeah, I am broke. I still bought it. I didn't steal it. Turner, I had a couple paid subs. I had 4, I think. And I just turned it off because I didn't really want stuff paywalled. Not doing it for the money. I am very behind in the chat thread. Yes. Juliette says oxygen is poisoning us just very slowly. It is. Turner asks if you should shut up and let him catch up. No, do not. I love reading this. This is awesome. I could go for the rest of the night. He doesn't even see us insulting him. He's so behind. Wow. That's great, guys. Okay, Theology Q&A. It looks like everybody is in on that. I'd love to get together with Turner and do it live. Yes. 85 is a respectable number. I like to think it is, yeah. Mickey, including audiobooks, I read 90. Mickey says, including audiobooks, I read 93 books last year. That's impressive. That's great. Margot says, dude, if he actually gets to 200 books, I'm going to be so impressed. I wouldn't get your hopes up. I'm going to try, though. It's worth trying. Substack is a very good platform to have thoughts on. I've been very impressed with how I've been treated on here so far. It's great because we needed a platform that was like YouTube for blogs. I love that someone came up with that. And I am finally at the bottom. I'm finally at the bottom. That's crazy. You guys talk a lot. And considering the fact I've been talking for the last hour and a half, I also talk a lot. No, don't spam the chat. Turner says, I think we should help Carson out and say something serious. Yeah, please do. Turner also says, I finished 1984 this morning. Awesome. It's an important book. I don't know what to think about that, Mickey. I'm going to reserve judgment on whether or not Hitler was that. Animal Farm is an awesome book. It may be my favorite book I've ever read in humanities. If you don't know what that is, you need to join Logos and find out what it is. Logos Online School. Favorite book I've ever read for school, Animal Farm. Mickey says he watches Gilmore Girls, and the motto is that life is short, so talk fast. I mean, that's not a bad motto. Can only get in so many words, so better say a lot of them. Okay, I'm going to give about 5 more minutes. Let's say we'll end it. So it's 4:30 my time, right? Or 4:29 my time. We'll end at about 4:35. And I'm just going to wait and see if any serious questions come through. Katie, I could not disagree more. Animal Farm is a masterpiece. I love it. It's like it's equally it's almost blasphemy to say that Animal Farm is psychotic. Kiara, least favorite things about Logos. The fact that it's online. That may be the only thing I don't dislike. Logos Online School, if you're someone who wants a solid Christian, conservative online school that's going to be faithful to Jesus and teach the Bible and all honors level, all amazing curriculum, you need to join Logos Online School. It is like the greatest school ever made. And I think the only one better may be Logos School in person in Moscow, and the only reason is because it's in person. LOS would be so cool if it was in person. Though to be fair, I'm not sure if an in-person LOS, an in-person school would survive us. You know. Okay. Austin says, so Carson, you're 16 and running this entire pod and sound like you have the knowledge of someone with 8 years on me. I don't know how old you are, but yes, I am 16 and I'm running this podcast. It's stressful sometimes. Okay. I will do more Q&As, Juliette. Turner says, what is going on with Candace Owens these days? She's crazy and she wants clickbait. So I'm sorry. I got to tell you guys about this. I wanted to keep this till next week. I'm going to be doing a reaction video, maybe live, to her podcast. Her latest episode, where she says, I'm not joking. You can look this up for yourself. It's her Project Looking Glass episode. She spends the first 25 minutes insisting that the Matrix is real. And that's tied into Charlie Kirk and how he was a time traveler and a bunch of other stuff that I'm not going to spoil before the episode, but I got to tell you guys that. So she's nuts. She's crazy. If anyone had any question about it, it's gone. She's crazy. And I'm going to be doing a reaction video to that next week. So stay tuned. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it live or not. Okay. The bathrooms of Logos High School are low-key trash. Okay. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Mickey, that would be putting it lightly. She is a bit off her rocker. Or worse, she is completely sane and she's doing it because she gets tens of thousands of dollars every episode. And the more insane conspiracy theories that she puts out, the more people she attracts. Comparing Charlie's life to the Truman Show seems very accurate. I think that's fair. Yes, Mickey, we all did know she was crazy after she said Charlie talked to her in a dream. Well, we knew she was crazy the moment she started attacking the widow of a man who just got his throat blown out in front of 3,000 people and on national television. That was when we knew she was crazy. If anyone in this country does not deserve to be attacked, it is Erica Kirk. And that is a hill I will die on. Turner, that's an interesting fact. If I ever go to Logos High School, I'll be sure to inform them of that. Shep, he's talking about Logos in person, the Logos High School in person. I agree, Juliette, but here's the thing. The money is obviously a huge motive in a lot of this, but you would need to, before you can make a claim, an insinuation like that, you would need to break down all of Erica Kirk's financial statements and ask, where did the money come from? And how purposeful was it? And how, personally, I like Erica Kirk a lot. She seems to be very impressive. Charlie picked her for a reason. He's not dumb. Like, if Charlie Kirk picks a wife, she's probably going to be pretty based, and she is. And she's running Turning Point. Amazing, in my opinion. She's doing everything that needs to be done. And all I hear are just insinuations about what might be. So, okay, I'm not going to spoil it. There are connections with Erica Kirk and The Matrix, according to Candace Owens, and we're going to be talking about that next week. So stay tuned. Yeah, Mickey, I agree. You should see some of the comments I get on YouTube. People are so emotional and so crazy and so like supportive of Candace with no logical or not logical reason for doing so. It's just crazy. Okay, last question because it is 4:35. So I'm going to answer Turner. Do you think Turning Point USA will fall apart when the Kirks retire? So what we have to appreciate is that Turning Point is already not the same. It's already not the same in a very big way because Charlie Kirk is dead. And in a way, Charlie Kirk was Turning Point USA. When you have a figure that's so big and so charismatic and so the personality is like 90% of all of it, you're going to lose a lot of that. And you're going to, okay, that's interesting, Mickey. You're going to lose just a ton of the vibe of the organization. I don't like that word, but that's all I can really think of. So I think we already lost a lot of it when Charlie died. I think the organization is the same. I think the organization is going to keep fighting. It's gotten a lot bigger. They're getting 50 new chapter requests a day. They've gotten over 100,000 new chapters since Charlie died. One of which was started at Logos Online School, Political Thought Society. So if go to Logos and you are not in Political Thought Society, yeah, I don't know what to do with you. Sorry, I don't know what to do with you. No, I'm just kidding. You're free to join whatever clubs you want, but that's a plug for Political Thought Society, Club America LOS. Also, Instagram.com/Club America LOS. I think look for Club America LOS on Instagram and follow it. That's our Turning Point chapter at Logos Online. So there's obviously a ton of new chapters. There's a ton of new people who are excited. Over 1 billion people have watched his funeral. And there were 100,000 people present and a whole nother stadium filled up. So, will it continue? All organizations fail eventually. All institutions fail eventually. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Turning Point USA will fail eventually. And the question is just when. I think when the Kirks die, it's going to be a massive blow. When Erica Kirk finally retires and she's out of it, it's going to be a huge blow. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's going to be the end of Turning Point, but it's going to hit it very wrongly. Okay, let me run through these real quick and see. Okay, I said I wasn't going to answer any more questions, and so I'm not. So save the rest of your questions if you can. Katie, yes. Well, could you just post it here in the chat? That would be great if you could do that. I do not have the link on hand. I love how a bunch of people are joining. I'm just about to end this. We're going on 1 hour and 45 minutes, guys. And honestly, I could keep going for another 2 hours, but I also know we've got people coming over soon and I've got other stuff I need to do, sadly. Turner, I also like his analogy of institutions being pirate ships. That's good. Yes, Glory, I'm still going. Not getting, going. My brain just decided to do something there. Okay, cool. So I will wait for Katie to send that link in the chat, the Instagram page. And once that's done, I'm afraid I'm going to have to turn this off. It's been fun. Bastissimus. Turner, that should be a Latin word. It's a joke in Latin class. I continually make up words that aren't actually in Latin. And I may need to bring that up next Latin class. Just totally plagiarize you. I'm kidding. I'll give credit. I will tell Mr. Sumter that you came up with that. Katie, you're good. Take your time. So I don't actually know. Okay, let me just, I'm just going to go and find the link. I think it is Instagram.com/turning /Club America LOS. But I'm not 100% sure. Austin, don't deprive us of your lovely voice. Okay. Whatever you say. So our president sent it out. Okay. So you can follow us on Instagram at club.america.los. Yep. So all you guys go follow right now. I'm not ending the stream until every single one of you follows. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, Mickey. Thank you for coming. Appreciate your questions. We're going to be done here in a minute anyways. All right. Well, the links are... Yes, Turner, I am restraining myself. We can... okay. Well, so there's several things I'm going to respond to. But first, I was restraining myself. Sabbath, I'm not a Sabbatarian at all. One area in which I seriously disagree with the rest of the Reformed. So we may need to literally just have a Q&A and talk about Sabbath. Turner says, what kind of salute was that? It was an American salute, yeah. It wasn't a Nazi salute or anything. I love how they did that to Elon. And he was doing a Nazi salute. Watch me get canceled for just insinuating that. Or oh, I see what you mean. It wasn't a good salute. Well, I can do a better salute. I'm not in the military, so it's difficult. Yes, it was a slang salute. That's good. That's what I do when I go out of class and stuff. All right, folks. I am going to end the live stream. This has been a massive amount of fun. We are going to do it again before long. And I may just invite some special guests on to talk with me. So you guys don't have to listen to my voice for an hour and a half, droning on about random things a lot of you probably don't care about. Okay. Like you. Oh, Shepard, you love this stuff. You listen to it all the time anyways because you live with me. Okay. See you guys. I appreciate all your support. Love you. And I'll see you again before long. And go subscribe. Not subscribe. Follow Club America LOS on Instagram. See ya.